Please do look. I'm going to be the timer, so you'll be able to see how much time you have for the various things here. So make sure you can see my thing. I'm not going to. Actually, maybe Nick, you can interrupt them when time's up.
Okay. Very good. So in that case, I'm not going to spotlight the candidates, although anyone who's on Zoom can spotlight the candidates themselves and make sure that the speaker is showing, but I want to make sure the candidates are able to see the timer. So if you, what I mean by that is in Zoom, you have two choices: the gallery view, which shows you everyone in the same size panel, or the speaker view, which shows you the currently speaking person in a large view. So just know you can choose between those, and I bet the candidates know that, having done a number of Zoom forums already. So without further ado, let's go to the first candidate, and I'll just arbitrarily pick candidate Joanne Walker, who's the top of my screen, to go first, and with the 2-minute introduction. Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, and thank you very much, Albany Democratic Group, for having me this evening. I want you to know that I'm running to become the sheriff of Alameda County, because this is the first time in over 33 years that the residents actually have an opportunity to vote in the person they would like to represent them. I feel that I am the ideal candidate, and I'm the only candidate who represents true change. Let me tell you a little bit about my qualifications. I've lived in Alameda County for over 40 plus years, a 26-year law enforcement veteran, as well as an adjunct professor for more than 27 years at California State University, East Bay. Know that I cannot see the timer. I have a master's degree in exercise physiology and 2 bachelor's degrees, one in French and the other one in nutrition and performance. I'm an award-winning trained volunteer suicide prevention crisis counselor at Crisis Support Services in Alameda County. And in 2016, I was the recipient of the U.S. Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service in Community Policing. My law enforcement career includes working as a terrorism liaison officer, community relations unit liaison, station keeper, field training officer, peer support counselor, academy instructor, crisis intervention member, captain problem solving team member, and a liaison for Healthy Streets Operations Center for concerns regarding our unhoused population. I would like you to also know that I have developed and conducted training for law enforcement professionals in hate crimes, tactical communications, and crisis support prevention. I have a certificate of achievement from the Robert Presley Institute of Criminal Investigation, Focus, Domestic Violence. I'm a graduate of the Master Instructor Development Program, Focus, Police Response to Emotionally Disturbed Persons. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop. I want to make sure that I am respectful of your clock, your time, and the basis of my platform is accountability, reform, and community-oriented policing in order to build trust. With introspection, hard work, and cooperation, together we can make the needed changes in the Alameda County Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to candidate Yesenia Sanchez.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Albany Dems, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Yesenia Sanchez. I was born in Hayward, where I attended public schools. My father immigrated to Oakland from Jalisco, Mexico when he was 12. My mother is from San Antonio, Texas, and she came to Oakland when she was 6 years old. I'm married and I have 3 stepdaughters. Before being hired onto the sheriff's office, I worked 3 jobs, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 at a used car lot in San Leandro. And night shift, 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. I was working at the Oakland airport loading Federal Express planes. And on the weekends, I was spending my time working shift work at McDonald's. So during this time, I lived mostly out of my vehicle. I started working at the sheriff's office at 19, promoted up the ranks in my 25 years. I've worked a variety of assignments. I've worked patrol, investigations, jail operations, and administration. I've also supervised in these areas, and I know how to lead and inspire a team. What has made me successful in each of my roles is my management style. I lead by showing my staff that I value them just as much as I value myself, and I answer to them just as much as they answer to me, and I will follow this model as sheriff. Now, as a division commander, you would think that as a division commander, I would have the authority to make much needed changes at the jail that I manage. I do not. And that is one of the reasons why I am running for sheriff. What I have done is establish relationships that will allow me to hit the ground running. And you cannot shift the culture of an agency as large as the sheriff's office alone. It must be done in partnership. And that partnership and those relationships are built on trust and credibility. And this does not develop overnight. And as a woman of color, I have the lived experiences to understand and recognize implicit and explicit bias and how it can lead to inequitable outcomes in our criminal justice system. And I'm committed to creating a safe and equitable quality of life for everyone in our county. I would love to have your support. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And I was a little remiss in not stating that there's one more candidate in the race, the incumbent, Gregory Ahern, but he is a Republican and could not be endorsed by this club. But he was invited to speak here. He stated that he had a conflict, or his campaign stated he had a conflict. I asked the campaign if the campaign wanted to send a substitute, and they never responded, despite a couple of queries in that matter. Okay, so we have our two Democratic candidates. All right, moving on to the next question, and 1 minute each, candidates, and I will keep switching back and forth between the candidate who goes first to be fair. What do you want to do differently than Gregory Ahern, who's currently in office?
All right, well, I'll start that off. What will be different? Yeah, absolutely. What will be different is I will be present and I will be accessible. I will be accountable to not only our agency members, but also to the community that we serve. And that's not what you see right now. I will be a part of the community events. You will see me speaking to our elected leadership out in our cities, as well as our community leaders. So that is absolutely key in making sure that we are providing service, and the service that is expected by our public and our community members. And I believe that that will allow for us to develop and build that trust that is absolutely needed within the county.
Thank you. And Joanne Walker.
Yes, what I would do differently is I would be accountable. I would be accountable for what takes place and what doesn't take place in the Santa Rita jail. Right now, due to the Babu settlement, we are mandated to do some things that have gone lacking for many, many years. It doesn't take 25 years to solve problems that have been long-standing. It takes leadership. It takes someone who is serious and committed to making some changes. And those changes can be made, of course, in conjunction with the other partners and stakeholders who can make some changes, who can give some information on how to make changes at the Santa Rita jail. We all know that it has gone too long. It has been too many years that have gone by where nothing has taken place, and 56 people dying since 2014. It is just something that we cannot continue to go for. We have got to make changes, and I'm the candidate who will go get involved and do just that. San Francisco is very similar to the Alameda County Sheriff's Department in numbers.
Okay, thank you. Time is up. So speaking of the Santa Rita jail, which is on people's mind, Joanne Walker, what specifically would you do to improve things at the Santa Rita jail?
The first thing that I would do is read the 110-page report that came out of the Babu settlement. I would make sure that we are in compliance with those rules and regulations. I would then talk to my staff, have a sit down, find out what their concerns are, find out where the deficits are, and then I would go through what we are using as a guideline, coupled with 20th century policing strategies to ensure that we are in compliance with what the Babu settlement says we need to do. I would also consider that there are skills that our community-based organizations bring to play there, and we need to make sure that we include them in some of the changes that are being made, because they are the ones who have the expertise in dealing with the mentally ill. I happen to be a volunteer who was trained through crisis support services. And so this is an issue that's very, very important to me. If we can save a life, why not do it? How do you do it? You make sure that your group goes through the training that's necessary. Appropriate supervision is also necessary. Title 15 is what we use. Thank you.
Thank you. and Yesenia Sanchez.
Yeah, so the jail has long been ignored. It has long been considered a lesser priority than law enforcement services and contracts for law enforcement services. The jail has been used as a staffing warehouse, and that's why we have seen some severe staffing shortages in the jail, which has led us to our consent decree and the DOJ having their investigation completed in 2019. The report came out in 2021, but definitely it triggered a number of things, because without staffing, you can't provide the level of service that is required and needed in the jail. And so that's where we're at. So, as sheriff, I will make sure that the jail is a priority and the services provided within the jail are a priority. When it comes to providing medical service in the jail and keeping our medical provider accountable, that is something that I noticed when I first walked in. And since my assignment at the jail, I've onboarded a quality medical assurance firm to review the policies and practices of our current medical provider, because we did not have that before. And now they do a robust assessment and review processes, and they've identified weaknesses.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, starting with Yesenia Sanchez. The closure of the county jail in Oakland made it more difficult for inmates and their families to remain connected, which is germane to recidivism. What are your thoughts on opening or reopening a county jail west of the hills?
Yes, so I definitely would be a fan of that. From what I understand in speaking to elected leadership, when that jail closed, there was no communication from the sheriff's office to the cities to let them know that that was going to occur. There was no conversation as far as what the impacts would be to the cities, and those impacts have been pretty severe. And an example of that is, when we had the Oakland jail, we had Oakland, Emeryville, Albany, Berkeley able to transport their arrestees to the jail. And then we would, if we couldn't provide services to those arrestees in Oakland, we would ship them to Santa Rita jail. But now they have to, the officers on the street are taken off the street for 3 hours at a time, because they're doing the transports all the way to Dublin. And then that takes them off the streets, and that affects the citizens of each city. So I definitely will be in communication with the cities as far as what the sheriff's office can do to mitigate the fact that they've had to pull off their officers off the street and provide service to their community members.
Okay, thank you. And Joanne Walker?
Yes, what I think we all know by now, that it was definitely a mistake to close the downtown jail. It has not only caused problems for those who are arrested, but it has caused problems for their family, and it has caused problems for law enforcement, because they're not available to be in service to take care of things that come up while they're on duty. So what I would like to do is take a look at the budget, do a top down of it line by line, find out how much money we have as far as discretionary spending goes, and see, do a comparative study to see how much it costs to run that jail, and see if we have enough discretionary spending to reopen that jail and staff it with people, so that when we arrest folks, we can house them right there in downtown Oakland, as opposed to taking them all the way over to Santa Rita. Their families can't get to them. They're already under stress. We can minimize a lot of the problems if we just use some, what would you call it? Clear thinking, some practicality in terms of how we provide services. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then starting with Joanne Walker, aside from the Santa Rita jail, which serves the whole county, what portions of the county does the department serve as the primary response entity, and what are some of the issues in those areas?
The unincorporated areas, for sure. And one of the things is that the sheriff's department is the police in the unincorporated areas. So in order to make sure that we understand what's going on, because we don't have eyes and ears all the time, we need to make sure that we partner with our community before there is a critical incident. How do we do that? We use community-oriented policing. Our deputies have to get out of the cars. They have to talk to people, learn their names, find out what's going on in their community and what some of their concerns are. Bring that information back to the sheriff's department Let's sit down, talk about it, and figure out how we can resolve those issues by providing better law enforcement services or pairing them and connecting them with community-based organizations and services so that they are empowered enough to take the responsibility of solving some of their problems without having us intervene. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Yesenia Sanchez.
Yeah, so providing service to our unincorporated areas of Alameda County, we definitely have a great group of folks who provide services and provide outreach to our youth and have embraced the community policing ethic and approach. And that's definitely an approach that I will push for an agency-wide model for community policing. Now, that aside, we have an overall responsibility for providing mutual aid to not only Alameda County, but multiple counties, 16 counties across the state, as far north as Del Norte County, and as far south as Monterey. But what we don't do is have conversations, at least with our local city leaderships, to have agreements on how we respond for mutual aid requests. And that is our primary role. And right now, it's kind of an all or none type of approach where we're going to do what we're going to do when we come into your city and provide service, and it should not be that way. And it's kind of like a my way or no way, and that is not how you build relationships and partnerships with your city leaders as well as your city law enforcement. That is what I will bring, making sure that we make agreements before.
Thank you. All right. And this is my last prepared question. So if people have other people have questions, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand after this question, and we can see if we can take a few questions from the audience. So we'll start with Yesenia Sanchez again for, or this time for this question. How would you work with the Board of Supervisors?
Oh, that's a great question. So right now, there is no sheriff present at the Board of Supervisors meetings. It is always the undersheriff who is the representation for the agency, which is fine. He does a great job, but the sheriff should be there. And the sheriff should be there for to answer difficult questions, to have uncomfortable conversations, and to work together with the peers that are the Board of Supervisors to bring a level of service to the community, because we all should have common goals, and we should all have relationships where we can call one another and let each other know what we have going on in our offices and what we are planning to move forward with, whether it's new technology and whatnot. All stakeholders should be at the table and should have input before we do anything that is new and that could potentially cause some concern with the public. So I will be present and I will be there, and I will have those relationships with our Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thank you. And Joanne Walker.
Yes, what I would do is I'd make sure that everybody knows that my door is open. As the sheriff, I would make sure that I brought in all of the stakeholders. I would make sure that everyone understood my model, and my model is public safety is everyone's responsibility. So what does that mean? It means that all of us should take a little part of it. So in order to make sure that that is developed through my administration, I would make sure that all the county-based organizations, citizens understand what my philosophy is and how it is a top-down and a sheriff's department way of doing business. And I would do that through meetings and Zooms and town halls and public appearances and meetings at the job. Any way that I could get and reach out, use technology to reach out to as many different people in the community as possible. That's what I would do. And I would make it something that's consistent. So this in my administration, me as the sheriff, I will not be invisible. I will not be someone who sits back and lets someone else take the responsibility and the accountability for what does or does not happen. I would let them know that the sheriff is alive, well, and very well aware of what is going on and needs your support in order for us to make the changes needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing anyone furnishing questions in the chat. Does anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question live of our candidates? Yes, Eleanor, please.
Yeah, I just in terms of looking at the jail situation, it looks like there's a real problem with staffing. And, as you have problems at the jail, we've got just a really high death rate. But there are just a plethora of problems and incidents at the jail. And I'm just wondering if part of those problems has to do with staffing, because there seems to be a real staff shortage. And so I'd like to ask both the candidates what their approach would be to, well, first of all, to talk about the staff shortages and then talk about what a solution would be, because I think that might be a fix for some of the problems that we're having at the jail.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Joanne, go ahead.
Okay, what I see from what I do as a station keeper, I'm doing part of the work that the deputies do in the Alameda County Sheriff's Department. One of the things that's important is to make the proper assessment when an arrestee is brought in. That comes down through ensuring that at the booking counter, first of all, that there are cameras, and also that we understand when we see someone who has a mental problem. We have to be able to identify that. It seems like that's not happening with the deputies at the Sheriff's Department. And I say that because they're letting people in who suffer from mental illness and they're putting them in administrative isolation. So what I recommend through Title 15 is that we redirect them to the hospital so that they can become stabilized before they enter Santa Rita Jail. The other thing about the staffing is that we have to hire people who have a different vision for law enforcement services. We have to hire people who want to do things differently and who see themselves as a part of the solution for different issues that have come up and that have transpired at Santa Rita Jail. How do we do that? We have to ask different questions during the oral board interview. We have to make sure that we tease out those people who know how to use words so that their implicit and their explicit bias does not show. We also need better supervision. We need to ensure that those supervisors who are there are adequately trained and our deputies are adequately trained as well. We need to do some shifting in terms of where people.
Time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll let Yesenia go a little bit longer as well. Yesenia Sanchez?
Yeah, so thank you. So I'll kind of let you know that the jail has been used as a staffing warehouse, and I'll explain how that happens. If someone in a law enforcement duty station outside of the jail gets hurt and goes off on an extended period of time for a medical injury or even medical injury pending retirement for a number of months or years, they're replaced with an able-bodied deputy from the jail. And there's no replacement for an able-bodied person to come work at the jail. That jail deputy goes out and starts performing law enforcement services with a vacancy left basically at the jail. So if you multiply that times 100 plus, for years, that's what's been happening. For years, the jail has been supplying able-bodied deputies to duty stations, contract services for the most part, without a replacement. And after a period of time, you exhaust the staffing levels at the jail. And that's where we are. And that's where we've been for a while. And that has also been pointed out in the consent decree. And so definitely the staffing has a direct impact on the services that are being provided in the jail, because the jail has been lesser prioritized by the current sheriff. So that is something that I will make sure. It is the largest duty station. It captures the largest number of funded positions within the agency. I will make sure that that jail is staffed so that we can not only provide the services that are outlined in the consent decree, but exceed those expectations, because there's much more we can do.
Thank you. Okay, and it looks like we have one hand up for one more question. I think that'll have to be the last question before the wrap up. So that question goes to Preston. That Preston goes to question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, given that explanation of staffing at the jail, is there budget for positions that currently are not filled or occupied, or has the budget also been reduced as the drain of staff has occurred? And there's mention that the sheriff department provides contract services. Is the sheriff's department the primary responder on contract for certain cities, or what are those contract services?
Okay, Yesenia?
Yeah, so some of those contract services are providing law enforcement services to the Oakland Airport, to AC Transit Police services. They follow the bus lines and provide service there. And the city of Dublin is also a law enforcement contract. So they are very large contracts, and there are positions that are funded at the jail, but they're funded and funding people that are not working there. They're off on extended leave. They're off on administrative leave. They're off. There's not a person that's working there. So they are funded positions, but they are carrying people who are off and not available to work. So that's kind of where we see ourselves. I don't know if there was another part to that question. I might have missed it.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you. And Joanne Walker.
Okay, I want to say that I don't work over at the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, not yet. And so the inside information I do not have, but this is what I want to say. If our able-bodied people are not being replaced in Santa Rita Jail, as the sheriff, that is my #1 responsibility. To let that jail go for since 2007 to the way it is right now, and just say it's a staffing issue and we're not replacing, that is not good enough. It is our job to make sure that when people are arrested, that they don't die in that facility. So if we need to make some changes in terms of the people that the employees that we have working there, we need to take a look at our budget, take a look at our contracted services, and try to figure out how we can make some changes so that people don't die in Santa Rita Jail because we don't have enough people to help.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see that our next forum candidates are here, and we're to them. We're running just about 10 minutes behind, so we'll be with you soon. But we've come to the end of our questions for our 2 sheriff candidates. So I want to give them now their 1 minute to give their closing statement, and we'll start with Joanne Walker.
Okay, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I am the only candidate who's already worked through a consent decree, so I know how sticky and uncomfortable it is. My job is to bring balanced leadership and legitimacy to the position of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, to protect immigrant communities, to improve inmate services at Santa Rita Jail, to establish working relationships with leaders in identified segments of the community, apply 21st century policing strategies to reduce inmate fatalities, establish systems that promote diversity at all levels of the Sheriff's Department, improve training regarding the use of force and training regarding mentally ill and emotionally disturbed persons, and also to invest in technologies that improve operational capabilities and effectiveness, because the morale of our officers decrease when they don't feel that we are providing the equipment, the training, and whatever else it is that they need in order to do a good job over at the jail. And finally, I want to say that death affects everyone, and we need to take care of our officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Yesenia Sanchez.
Yeah, so I guess I could say that I'm the only candidate that has negotiated a consent decree and begun the implementation process. I am also the only candidate to receive the endorsement of the California Democratic Party, Alameda Labor Council, SEIU 10-1, NUHW, the Building and Construction Trades Council, also endorsements from Wellstone, Stonewall, East Bay Young Dems, Latina Young Dems of the East Bay, Hayward Dems, Tri-Cities, Democratic Forum, Castro Valley, Tri-Valley Democratic Club. Other notable endorsements include Senator Wachowski, Assemblymember Bill Quirk, Assemblymember Mia Bonta, and Board of Equalization Malia Cohen. Also BART Director Latifah Simon, Supervisors Brown and Valle, former Senator Lonnie Hancock, and the mayors of Alameda, Berkeley, Emeryville, and Oakland. Also city council members from these cities and the cities of Fremont, San Leandro, and right there in Albany. All of you have an opportunity to make a difference and be a part of making history. You will have a hand in bringing Alameda County its first Latina sheriff. And I'm honored to be here tonight to speak with you, and I'd be honored to have your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to both candidates for making the time to come and speak with us tonight. We appreciate it very much. And thank you to our timekeeper for keeping us on time. And we'll move on to our next forum. So have a good night, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. And I see we have another candidate who's participating from CAR. And so it seems to be the night for that. Welcome to our two candidates for Alameda County Superintendent of Schools, Elise Castro and L.K. Monroe. Elise, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Perfectly, thank you.
Oh, okay, very good. The forum will be the same as the last. The format of the forum will be the same as the last time. We will have 2 minutes for opening statements, and 1 minute then questions, and 1 minute for the responses to the questions for each candidate, and then we'll have a 1 minute closing statement from each candidate too. And I will switch back and forth between the candidate going first so that we keep that fair. And I will randomly pick Elise.
So I
Castro to go
also
first.
want to point out, just because we were first, so I'm the timer here. So you will see the timer going off here. So hopefully you can either pin it or find a way that you can hopefully keep track of the timer when you are speaking.
Thank you.
Matt.
Can you see that? It's Gabrielle Botti, who's that's the name on the timer screen there.
Yes, it's incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, then I was going to say you randomly appear as the first in my Zoom screen, Elise Castro. So please go ahead and start your 2 minute opening statement.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the time, everybody. My name is Elise Castro. I am an educator. I have been 26 years in the public school system as a middle and high school teacher, as a principal, as an instructor of school resource and finance at UC Berkeley in the Graduate School of Education, and currently serving as the director of county schools in our neighboring county of San Francisco. I have a soft spot in my heart for teenagers, especially teenagers with problems. So you know I'm basically crazy. Work in the public schools and working with teenagers in the public schools, as I moved into a leadership role, I adopted a motto. And my motto is that my job is to make your job possible. And I've been using that a lot as I'm trying to explain to folks what the county is all about, because the County Office of Ed is a support role. It exists to support the districts and the individual students who need it to keep them from falling through the cracks. And that's why I am doing this, and that's why I am supported by the California Teachers Association. It's why I am supported by the California School Employees, which is all of our classified non-teaching staff. It's why I'm supported by the Alameda Labor Council, because this is a time when education needs more support. I am also specifically supported by your own Albany teachers, for which I am extremely grateful. There are some things that the county can help us do. It can help us really break the school to prison pipeline by embedding supports in all of our schools. You don't need police officers when you have social workers, counseling, mental health services, when you have partnerships with your city agencies, when you have and can hold on to teachers from your community and educators from your community. And ultimately, these are the ways that we can help our teachers make their job possible. So that's what I'm about. That's what I'm here for. And I really thank you for making the time tonight.
Thank you. And on to L.K. Monroe.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'll start out by telling you that I'm a third generation educator. My grandmother was a preschool teacher in Oakland. My mother was a teacher and principal in Berkeley, and I was a teacher and principal and school improvement grant coordinator in Oakland Unified. I come to this job because I care deeply about the power of education. I have seen it walked out in my own family, not just in my immediate family, but beyond that. I've been privileged to serve 2 years as the Alameda County Superintendent of Schools. During that time, we have completely changed the way we serve our districts at the county office. When I came in, I implemented something called Facing Our Future. FACE stands for Flexible, Accountable, Collaborative, and Empowered. These are the 4 things that we were not, and the 4 things that we absolutely needed to be as a county office to serve our districts and our students. When I first came to the county office, we did not have accredited schools. which was really hard to understand, how for decades we could be educating students at schools that they would graduate from and not have the same benefits as their peers who graduated from fully accredited schools. That was job number one. And it took us about a year and a half, but we accredited those schools. In my time as county superintendent, I brought early learning back to the county office. We've been leading for that, for quality early learning programs. I have implemented a collective impact initiative, Birth to Career, with the tagline of every young person receiving a family sustaining wage by the time they're 25. That includes work-based experience, as well as things like early numeracy for our early learning professionals. I am honored to be here tonight and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could you, and we'll start with LK Monroe, could you please describe the job, or maybe what you think are some of the most important parts of the job?
Sure. So this is a, as you will know, it's a little known office, but with a breadth of responsibilities. So there's academic and fiscal oversight over the 18 school districts that are in Alameda County, in addition to overseeing the schools that we have to directly serve the students at juvenile hall in our community schools. The county superintendent also must support the district. So I support district superintendents, associate superintendents, the heads of student services throughout the county to make sure that they can do their job to the best of their abilities. So we give them resources and support and technical assistance and staffing when needed. During the pandemic, I repurposed folks who are working in our academic services division to actually sub, because that's what school districts were telling us they needed. They really needed people who could sub while their teachers were recovering from COVID, or they just had vacancies, because we are suffering from a huge work shortage right now in education. So that's just a little bit about what the county superintendent does.
Thank you. Elise Castro.
Yeah, so the way I think of it is that the county superintendent has sort of three big jobs. The first one is to superintend the schools that the county runs. And the county runs schools for kids that cannot be served by a district. So that includes our schools inside of juvenile hall. That includes our school at Boys Ranch, Camp Sweeney. That includes schools for expelled youth. And then also gives us rights and responsibilities to serve high needs kids who are foster, homeless, and high needs special education. So that is job one, is to do a life-changing job of serving those young people. The county superintendent also supervises and approves the budgets and the accountability plans of all 18 districts in the county, and then has a significant budget. In the case of Alameda County, it's about $25 million of essentially unrestricted funds to provide supports for those districts. And that's really why it matters what the values and experiences of your county superintendent are, because what supports they provide are driven largely by that.
Okay, thank you. How are the schools and starting with Elise Castro, how are the schools in Alameda County doing, and how can the county office help or hurt?
I'm sorry, do you mean the district schools or the schools actually operated by the County Office of Ed?
Well, that's a good question.
You can clarify. I think I put that one in, Nick. Yeah, so I would say, that all the schools in the county kind of as a whole, to the extent that the county department can help or not help them.
So in terms of the districts, our districts are incredibly diverse, and how they're doing, there's not one answer to that question at all. But I think the key to what the county can do is lighten the load. The county can look at what are the things that all districts need and all districts are struggling with, and how can the county step in and take that. So there are pieces with making sure that we have the social emotional supports for our kids, that we have social work and counseling and agency contracts that we're able to provide services for our highest needs kids so that each individual district doesn't have to recreate that wheel? How are we providing teacher training that recruits and retains teachers from our community for our community and helps them to stay here, because we have, as LK mentioned, a huge teacher shortage, and onboarding folks is one thing, but keeping them here and training and developing them to be the excellent teachers that we need over the course of the next generation. These are all high leverage areas where a county can lean in or could kind of step back. Sorry, I went over my time there.
Oh, no. Okay, thank you for that. LK Monroe?
So this is something that really excites me, that we've been able to do, something that has been a shift, quite frankly. So one of the powers of the County Office of Education is as a convener, bringing people together, job alike, folks who are job alike, teachers, educational leaders, even heads of maintenance and operations. One of the things that we have pivoted to, instead of having disconnected grant programs that some people may use, some people may not, we are looking closely at the needs of our district through how their students are achieving, through what their students and their teachers and their leaders want to participate in. So what we've done is we have actually gone after a number of grants and partnered with our districts and convened teams. So teams come from our districts and actually say, okay, for example, we want to make sure we're implementing arts in our schools, but the way in which Piedmont may need to implement arts may be different from the way Hayward is looking at implementing arts. So those teams are coming together and actually making those plans. And we have team members and staff who are helping them to implement. Thank you. I lost track of the timer. Appreciate it.
So, and then starting with LK, why are you the best person for the job or the better person for the job?
One, because I know the job really well. I've been doing it for a long time. And when I came into this office, I came into it because, as I led with, because of my passion for education. You'll also hear Ms. Castro talk about this. I didn't come in to this because I wanted to be an elected official. I came into this because I wanted to lead for education, and I could see that there was a need to step up and step in. I was brought to the County Office of Education because the student programs that we had were weak. They were not of high quality. And we have elevated those programs. We've elevated the way we support those programs, and we have elevated exponentially the way we support our districts. I hold myself accountable to how I support my districts. So through the pandemic, whether it be testing or vaccines or guidance, we are at every turn making sure that our districts are supported to do the job that they need to do.
Thank you. Elise Castro.
So I have a really long history of making things happen in public schools far more efficiently and more effectively than the next person. And that is, as I mentioned, I have this experience with school resource and finance as well as alternative ed. Those are a very diverse and divergent skill set, but I bring both of them together. But ultimately, this is a job that's about support, and the primary people it's about supporting are school employees, about teachers and school employees. And if you don't have the support of the teachers and the school employees, you're not really well positioned. At this point, being directly supported by the teachers who work at ACOE as well as countywide, and the staff that works at ACOE as well as countywide, that's a bit of a vote of no confidence for the current superintendent. And that's a request from the teachers across the county for new leadership. Because they need a lot of support right now, and they're asking for it.
Thank you. Okay, starting with Elise Castro. What's the interaction, for example, between the Albany Unified School District and the county office, either potential or interactions you might know about?
So all the districts have the same sort of level of oversight and supervision of their budgets and their accountability plans, and they can seek additional partnership from the county if needed. But if they're fiscally sound, then that's more or less just a consent relationship. The key is really in what services are provided and what services are needed. So all districts, especially smaller ones like Albany, struggle with economies of scale, and when there are high needs students, how they are able to be supported. And it's often duplicative for small districts like Albany to need to create their own programs. So being able to partner and use those resources of the county is a very important option, as well as everything about teacher onboarding, development, training, ongoing professional development, expertise in different curriculum areas, English language development, multilingual pathways. Those are all things that smaller districts turn to the county for.
No worries. Thank you. And LK Monroe.
So we support our districts in a number of ways, and Albany is one of those districts where we have a higher touch. Usually with our smaller districts, we actually have a closer relationship because you just don't have the depth of personnel and support that is absolutely necessary to bring everything, all the investments and all the priorities to your students that you want. So while it is important, of course, to support every member of the educational workforce, the superintendents rely on the county superintendent and the county office for the support and the direction they need. So we're working with them to make sure their budget's balanced, to make sure that before we get to a point of where we have to say you're in trouble, that we're working with you. I have staff that come out to Albany's board meetings and really help explain or add context to decisions that are being made that we understand and can help support.
Okay, thank you. It's been a crazy 2+ years for everyone. And in particular, the schools have been hard hit by the pandemic. We seem to be coming out of it, but what still needs to be done? What help do the schools still need? LK Monroe.
So a lot of help. What schools are noticing, what districts are noticing, is that the students who left them 2 years ago when we entered into shelter in place are not the students who've returned. Not every student, but most. There are more needs. There are academic needs. There are also social emotional needs. During the pandemic, I started a social emotional wellness department because we could see that that was one of the biggest needs. So yes, it's also for students who are at the margins, but every student who has experienced isolation and separation. And really, not all students thrived in that independent learning environment. And we know school is really the best place for students to be. So as we are emerging from this pandemic, or really learning to exist in a new normal that includes COVID, we really understand that we need to build into what's been lost, particularly for our youngest learners. There has been a lot lost, and teachers are now having to be responsible for standards in the grades 2 years below what they normally teach.
Okay, thank you. And I've run out of my prepared questions, but let's see.
I didn't answer that one yet.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Oh, no worries. And thank you everyone for your patience with my extremely strange visual setup here. Ghost-like. Okay, so I mean, I agree with everything that LK said about the social emotional needs of our kids coming out of pandemic. This is very much the work I've been doing in addition to my work in schools, where we have social work and community-based support for every student in every school. I'm also the president of the board of Alameda Family Services, where through the pandemic, we were able to continue providing services and supports to thousands of kids who are out of school. At the same time, the other piece of the picture is academically, that as we are moving in and out of pandemic learning, and as we can anticipate both looking back and moving forward, what how do we optimize learning experiences, and how do we take home what we learned from pandemic education about blended learning, about rather than forcing kids to be either in or out of school, to do hybrid programming, to ensure that kids and teachers have options, and that we learn from this experience that we had and be able to provide the more flexible education.
Thank you. Okay, apologize again for the mishap. As I was mentioning, I've run out of prepared questions, but would anyone in the audience like to raise their hand and ask a question live or put a question in the chat? Not seeing anyone. I have another question then for both candidates. Should the county have done anything differently during the pandemic for the schools than it did? And we'll start with Elise Castro.
Well, we're picking up right where we left off. All of our schools during pandemic learning needed to become immediate experts in how to do remote and blended instruction. And that's what we did with my schools. Is we took the first few weeks to say, we're going to dive deep. We are going to ensure that all of our students are the winners of emergency remote learning. And we went to a fully personalized learning model with continuous professional development for all of our staff about how to do this crazy thing that we were all suddenly doing. And so that is, I think, probably the biggest actionable space for a thing that we could have done differently in Alameda County during the pandemic, is provided those support services and continued to provide them during the return in this crazy year when every district was required to offer independent study even to our youngest learners. And that's a whole new way of teaching. And it's something that we all have really struggled with. And it's a place where we could use some real expertise.
Thank you. LK Monroe.
So we did do that. And we do have real expertise at the County Office of Education. We have incredibly talented people who know a lot and led for this in districts. While there could always be something different and more done because it was a pandemic, there were things that we were pivoting and adjusting to, sometimes on an hourly basis, not just on a daily or a weekly basis, but we were there at every turn. If you look on our website now, we have a guidance document that is really, I mean, so many people have said, this was the way we were able to chart a path forward during the pandemic. We helped districts to get technology. We helped districts make sure that they could have their students connected in that time. I sit on the board of Supply Bank. Supply Bank, as well as the state, worked to provide PPE for free to districts. We distributed all that to districts. We bought tests that we distributed to districts when they did not have enough. I was able to get the first federal FEMA mobile vaccination unit at ACOE to vaccinate members of the education workforce. And so really proud of that work.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any more questions. Any hands raised? Last call for questions in the chat, hands raised. If not, then we'll just go right to closing statement. Oh,
we have Eleanor raised her hand.
Thank you, yeah. Oh, you're muted currently, Eleanor.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about IEPs. I've heard throughout the district, throughout the county, that there continues to be a problem with districts fulfilling their requirement for IEPs with students. And during the pandemic, there just really wasn't a plan in place, from what I understand, and it could just be the parents that I've talked to. But can you talk about what some of the deficits are in terms of fulfilling IEPs countywide, and what kind of resources you think need to be put in place to help districts better address the needs of children?
And
What's that?
I'm just going to here before we let LK Monroe answer that. Could you just, Eleanor, define IEP for those who might not know?
It's an IEP, Independent Education Plan, I believe it's what it's
Individual
called.
education
Yeah.
plan.
Individual education plan. It's for kids that have special needs. So it could be hearing needs, it could be learning disabilities, it could be physical handicaps or problems. But the districts have a requirement to work with parents to create specialized plans for each of those children that is individual and meets their needs.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you for the question. And it's LK Monroe's turn to answer first.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And we really did see the district struggled with this quite a bit during the pandemic, making sure that what is called for in the IEP actually got walked out. We actually did help districts to meet some of those needs. You can imagine that students who have IEPs are special needs students, some of them with minor learning disabilities and some of them with much more major challenges, really needing that high touch, hands-on kind of experience. And that virtual learning was really difficult for them. So really needing to equip teachers with particular skills to be able to do what they do well on a daily basis, but to adapt that for adaptive learning, for remote learning was not easy. So we convened districts, a lot of the associate superintendents of instruction around this very issue to say, what kind of practices are you using that you are finding most effective with your students? There's so much more to say about that, but that's where I'll leave it in 1 minute.
Yeah, that's not a quick question, but so I think that some of the opportunity space there is in how the county can lighten the load for districts so that they can focus more of their core resources on their kids. Every district struggles with serving their kids with IEPs with and without pandemic. It's a stretched population. We don't have enough special education teachers. That's not just Alameda County, that's everywhere. So there's an opportunity there in additional teacher development. There is an opportunity in counties are authorized to run special needs programs. So one thing that we could be looking to do more of is run programs through the county for some of our highest needs kids, which frees up resources then for districts to focus on some of the kids with slightly lesser needs. And then it's really all about what are we doing in the general classroom to support all kids so that every tiny little problem doesn't require an IEP and doesn't require a whole special needs specialist to solve it, because ultimately all kids are special and they all have needs.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we're almost at half an hour time, so we'll go ahead and close those questions and go to the 1 minute closing statement by each candidate. And it is Elise Castro who will start us off.
So again, thank you so much for having us and for putting this together and putting up with my lighting. As I opened with, I am an educator. I have no interest in a political career. This is the one and only office I will ever run for. And I'm doing it because I have the skills to provide a level of support to teachers and kids and districts that I can't just step back and not use. I understand that really no one knows what a county superintendent does. It's an incredibly obscure office. And even when we've been talking about it for half an hour, you probably still have as many questions as you have answers. So I encourage you to trust the people who do know what the county superintendent does. Trust the teachers who work for the county office of ed. Trust the employees who work for the county office of ed. Trust the teachers across the county. Trust the teachers of Albany. Trust the educators who are saying, we need something different. Trust some of your fellow Dem clubs, including the Wellstone Dems, who have an incredibly active education committee, and as well as the juvenile justice community. Folks are asking for this change. Thank you.
And LK Monroe.
Well, thank you again for having us. This is an incredibly important conversation. I don't like to spend my closing remarks actually, focusing on things that are negative or deficit oriented, but I feel like I need to address some of Ms. Castro's remarks about this vote of no confidence. So one of the things I can say is that during this pandemic, there have been many challenges and a lot of people are frustrated. What I can say is that when Ms. Castro worked for me in 2014, those same teachers did not choose her to persevere as our chief of schools. They chose someone else. And I chose someone else. So I understand that this is how this goes during elections. It's just kind of the way things are. Those in my county office, those decisions were made by approximately 27 people in our agency. And we are working right now with those people to make sure we get on the same page. And it's really important. I'm endorsed by Congressman Eric Swalwell, by Tony Thurmond, by Buffy Wicks, by Bill Quirk, Keith Carson, Richard Valle, by Tri-City Dems, Tri-Valley Dems, BWAPA, and many others you can see on my website.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for being here and taking the time with us tonight. Very much appreciated, especially since looks like at least one of you had some special car circumstances there. But in any case, we really appreciate you making the time. We've put the information in our email about their websites and on our Facebook page, but feel free to share in the chat here too. Thanks once again, and thanks to our timekeeper for keeping us on time. And
Thanks, Albany.
I appreciate
Bye-bye now.
you. Good night.
Good night. Okay, and so now is the time for our voting members to have a discussion about the endorsement, and we'll have to kick off those who are non-voting members. And
Good time to stop
Brian,
the recording as well.
thank you very much. Thank you. One moment. Stop.